I have some questions regarding your text, Purple Music. The first question is, what does purple music mean?
We'd say immediately that purple music means transcultural sound. So it has to do with music and one's relationship to sound. We can say, in simple terms, participation in a higher frequency of sound, which would make it light then. And the implications would be creative, but not self-creative. That's about as far as it's going to go right now, as far as that goes. Right.
By transcultural, do you mean some sort of world fusion?
It's not world. Cultural is world. I'm talking about something we have to put in terms of the spiritual. Yeah. Cultural is gravitational. Yeah. It's a step up. Yeah. So everything then relative to the earth and its culturing is a step away from the earth and its culturing. So life is a step up beyond life. You're here to die, that means go beyond life through death, which may be the true life, depending. So that relative to, if we're talking purple music, which means sound, a certain level of sound, so you realize sound, then we're talking about the spiritual componentry of what it is. And everything is just a step up to it.
And what distinction can you make between the transcultural and the spiritual music of specific cultures?
Say that again?
What,
distinction between?
the transcultural music and the cultural spiritual music, let's say.
Well, the spiritual music of the culture aspires towards this. See, it aspires towards that which is beyond the culture of pain and suffering. Beyond the culture of the blues, let's say, which is a sacred color. All the colors are sacred, how they function. And so it's the same with what comes from the culture that is part of its aspiration, its hopes, wishes and dreams, to becoming something more than suffering, more than struggle, more than trying to do or say something or be something. And that's what it is to be human. At its best, not what it is to be human less than the best. What it is to be human less than the best is pretty dark, pretty dead, perhaps. It's moving from darkness to maybe lightness, some lightness, say, from real pain and suffering, sorrow and depression, to some kind of sense of normalcy, being functional and so on. So it goes on and on. Everything is a step to the next place if you're on the progressive path. If you're on the path of progression, let's say, and you can't realize anything beyond your experience in yourself and your material condition, well, then you gotta go the path of progression and then move towards that which is beyond progression.
So then, is it the role of the spiritual music to, let's say, transcend the culture?
Spiritual music?
Yes.
Well, not so much to transcend the culture. That's not in the conversation of people who are playing spiritual music. It's really about healing themselves and their people. And spiritual has more kind of a gospel implication to it. Good feeling, say, good news. But it's not transcendent. It's with the people, it's for the people, it's more healing for the peeps. So it has its sacred purpose. It's a step up or a step inside. Purple music's transcendent in every sense of the word. So once you get it, you have less questions about that compared to anything else, because you already know what anything else is. So there's knowing about it, and then there's letting it be.
So then, cultural music, let's say, is folk music, but purple music is something more?
Folk music? Well, classical music is also folk music. All music is folk music, basically. Aside from the level of technical and, say, mechanical, and or musical complexity and all the rest of it. Apart from that, we're not talking about the simplest of forms, we're not talking about the most complex of forms. We're talking about that which is beyond forms. And purple music refers to that sound which is transcendent, even of itself.
Does America play a unique role in terms of music, and specifically purple music?
America has nothing to do with purple music. So, clearly, as of today, it was introduced to you. So, America has nothing to do with it in a manner of speaking. If America is really about the word freedom in terms of a transcendent implication, then I would say that that's moving out of the blue and into the purple. Out of the blue implying beyond the sky and into reality. Yeah. But it doesn't seem like that's what America's about. America's about politics as usual and giving people a grassroots opportunity to improve themselves and maybe educate themselves and do for themselves. So it's really a mecca for self-building, not self-transcending consciousness or realization. And it's a great start. But this has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the transcendent. It's to do with beyond the earth. So anything that's having to do with the earth it's not what it is. Although what it is, in truth, is present. It's always present. So just like we can say that the spirit is always present, but not very many people can resonate with it as it is. They can resonate with the idea of it and maybe the occasional feeling of it and feeling good about what that is and say, well, we were in the spirit last night and we were all feeling good. We're not talking about that kind of spirit. We're not talking about just feeling good and then going back to your ordinary humdrum or whatever it is, you're suffering yourself and your programs and all of that. We're talking about departing from all of that, leaving that behind completely and gone beyond. Living here in the body but not in the body and not really living here alone. So this is what is implied by the idea of purple music and its relationship to silence. Hear this carefully so you can get it and your questions then can be more in tune with what that is.
Do certain forms of music provide a better starting point for which to get to purple music?
Not particularly, it's not a form of music. So any form of music is the same. If we're talking about contemplative states, trance states, then maybe there could be some connection, deepness. Right, because we're talking about silence. It's really a form of silence. It's a dynamic, purple music is a dynamic form of silence, to put it in very concrete, precise terminology. But what does the person know of silence which is beyond the absence of sound? Right back to the starting point. Who knows? But that very question then goes to the heart of what purple music is. Who knows? Say. And then I have to flip that and say, well, who doesn't know what it is? And why? Why don't you know what it is? And so that's what it is. It's here, and then as a demonstration of itself, so to speak, and then it's here as a means for illuminating other peeps once they're on the proper resonance with what that is beyond themselves. Because everybody is also beyond themselves, but not living beyond themselves. Everybody's living as themselves. So here we're talking about the proposition of living beyond yourself and doing what you have to do as yourself, but from beyond yourself. And that's a spiritual view of what it is to be human and spiritual at the same time.
Do improvising musicians have a better basis for getting beyond themselves and getting to this music?
No, no. It's not about improvisation. No, it's just playing with yourself. Improvisation is working with a very, very small function of variation. Ordinarily, now it could be deeper than that, but ordinarily people practice their improvisations, they listen to improvisation, they study improvisation, they imitate improvisation, so their improvisation is not improvisation. It's just another form of same old. Same old, same old. Playing what other people are doing, imitating what other people are doing, playing what other people are playing. So it's more the same. It's not really improvisation. It's like improvisation. It's like creative expression. It's like that, say, almost that.
And does introducing a spiritual component make improvisation purple music?
Oh, what do you mean by spiritual component?
A spiritual need for expression?
It's not purple music. Purple music's beyond all kinds of needs for anything. It's beyond expression. It's transcendent. So you have to, again, understand what purple as transcendent, dynamic silence is. And then you have a better idea where else a person can be coming from, so to speak. In other words, you can't get to purple music. You can't do purple music. It's not possible to do it. And yet it is what it is.
And does it exist for the purposes of healing?
It is ultimate healing. Because it has not, there's nothing to it. It is light, so to speak. So I could say it's a dynamic silence. So it's presence. And yet it is more than you can say about it. And yet there's nothing that you can do about it. You can't get to it. But there's a lot you can say about it.
When you say you can't get to it, are you saying you can't get to it from music, or can you get to it from spirituality?
Well, it doesn't exist in things. It is what it is, but it doesn't exist in things. Yet it is all pervasive, and it doesn't exist in let's say, beings. And this is paradoxical, yet it is all pervasive. We can say it's the, to put it in other terms that are more traditional, esoteric terminology, it's the essence of everything. So nothing you do, because it's the essence already of everything, and that's its real, perfect status as the essence. But nobody knows what that is. You can use the terminology of light, and then we have to say then it's sound. But I would say dynamic silence. And yet it is not the absence of sound at the same time. It's the dynamic silence which is not the absence of sound.
So does the essence imply purity? Is this a pure form of music?
Only in terms of being liberated from music. You can't call it music, right? When you look at it, you say, speaking of the purple means that there's nothing there. And so, because of there being nothing there, I call it purple music. There's nothing there. Ness of sound. So it's not a melody, it's not a combination of notes, it's not a rhythm, it's not a pulse. It's not an appearance of music. It's beyond the appearances of music. Because it's already being played here. You just have to know how to hear it. And then you can't hear it if it's a form in your mind. But because of it, it enables you to hear. But you can't hear it unless you're hearing yourself hear it. If you can hear hearing, then you might be closer to what it is.
Can it exist?
We can, I want to add to your probe, that we can say that it's related to the music of the spheres, but it's, at that level it's not a music. It's not a strain, because at that level sound is more vibration than the spirit of what vibration is. Because then we're talking about ordinarily, it's the music of the spheres, it's the omness, the omness, see, of, like, say, creation and the universe as an organism. The breathing, the breath of the universe. It's beyond that. It's neither expanding nor contracting, because it's an isness, it's absolute. It is. It has no form or shape or movement, one way or another. And this is important. So the idea that I'm proposing, and living from, in a manner of speaking, relative to being some kind of a musician, is that purple music is the answer to the no question. For the no one who needs to know or do anything about it.
Does the consideration of the possibility of purple music change or influence a musician's creations?
Well, it depends. If I put it in certain terms and you can resonate with it for real, not just hear it conceptually and say, oh, he said this. But go beyond that and say, oh, because I heard this now, when I went to my instrument, something else happened. And I've never been the same. Then there's an influence, perhaps. And then it's the influence based upon the speech of purple music, and not about purple music whatsoever, but it's upon hearing the speech of it. It has a corresponding effect. A sense of power, a sense of connectedness that remains mysterious, nevertheless, regardless of what a person's thinking or being, because it is what it is, and it's all pervasive. It means it's the essence, which is ever present. We can say, traditionally, it's been called the Great Spirit. I would say it's close to that, but without the connotations and the baggage of the Great Spirit belonging to anybody. It's just this Great Spiritness.
So you mentioned the music of the spheres is non-human.
It's the same. The music of the spheres is the silence of the spheres.
So another non-human form, for example, the landscape, whether it's audible or not, is it creating purple music?
It's not creating any kind of music particularly, but it is living its song. Nature is living its song. And it can live its song because of purple music as its origin, its source.
So then would openness to that kind of non-music music bring one closer?
Not necessarily. You can't get any closer to it than you are right now. So you can't do anything to access it because it's already what it is. And all you're going through is a ritual of doing something, thinking something, and that's what you do all the time, so what good is it? In any case, what good is it?
So thinking does not lead to purple music.
Thinking leads to thinking.
And what about jazz? Is that a creation of human existence?
Jazz is human nature. Yeah? Jazz is human nature. It is part of the condition, so it's completely natural, in a sense. Yeah. Jazz. If we're talking about what pertains to, let's say, more cultural, solid cultural thing, in terms of, let's say, the black experience, right? The African experience, which I'm part of in a certain way. I'm raised on African music, so I'm very close to the African culture, black African culture. Okay? And it's drumming, and it's music, and it's dance, and song. It's all part of my origins, childhood. So it's part of that. So we're talking about sound African sound is different. You have Australian sound, it's similar but different. You have Japanese sound, similar but different. Yeah. We're talking about then African voodoo, in a sense. And by voodoo, I mean escaping the bondage. See? So it has an implication of liberation, radical liberation, going beyond yourself, which is like yoga, going beyond your suffering. See? Different from yoga, of course, because you have your escape, you have your passing out, or you have your epiphany or your ecstasy, and then you come back to your norm. In the yogic sense of that kind of experience, there is no norm. You come back to, you just keep unfolding, keep burning off whatever it is that shows up. So you go beyond, you go beyond everything. And this is more like that. See? And so when we get back to jazz, jazz is a mix. It's a certain kind of mix from experience. So you have to know suffering to get to the blues, and you have to know complicated suffering, very intellectually complicated suffering to get to jazz in some cases. So all of it is born of human experience. If we're talking about improvisation or creativity, that doesn't belong to any culture. You have to survive, you create. If you have to survive, you improvise. If you got to cross a bridge, you got to make a bridge. If you got to cross a river, you got to make a bridge. So how do we do it? Well, forget about it. Let's get some trees and get some vines and tie things together and make it work. See, so that's maybe that's jazz, some say, but that's human nature, ingenuity. It's not a form of music necessarily, because you can have people play the notes of music. Doesn't mean you're playing jazz or you're a jazz musician. You go to school, play with the jazz musician play. That doesn't make you a jazz musician. Experience makes you a jazz musician. And at best, then you have a certain kind of ingenuity. You're able to create regardless. But I'm saying that's not cultural. That's native. That we are born to survive. And we're talking about capitalizing on a survival instinct. And then there's creative genius beyond that. That's not cultural. And that's the norm, say, for the creative. Improvisation is really a way of breathing. It's not what you learn, it's what you are. So as I was saying earlier, people are going to improvise. It sounds like it's something they're going to do. That's not what they are. See, if you are, then you don't talk about doing it because it's already happening. See, so what are you doing? So being true. So I'm improvising. I don't do any improvising, and yet everything I play is different, as it needs to be, because it's part of the universe's transformational quality of never being the same, always changing, recreation. And so you want to call it jazz or improvisation, you can call it anything, but purple music is beyond that. It's beyond that. You can't do anything. Doesn't matter if you're Beethoven improvising as he said in one book or another that I read back in the school days. It says, these improvisations are profound, and cause anybody's head to basically spin off, but I gotta do compositions for commission. Okay? So he's already saying that in terms of his compositions, you're getting less than what he was and could do. Right? You want the compositions. And he loved to improvise, which is true of a creative musician. And then when they're at that stage, it's not like they're doing anything important. It's, as I said, once you are being in the creative, and you're always improvising, and it's beyond you. It just is what it is. And creating forms is easy as pie. The mind is all forms. The mind has all the links. Once you hear a certain way, you can hear the variations, and so it's easy as pie to go this way, that way, and any which way, because after all, it's just machinery. That's all it is, machinery. It's mechanical. It can be creative. It can be spontaneous. That's part of the machinery. The creative and even spontaneous, you can call it that, expression, depending on what level it's coming from. But none of this is purple music, but it could be in line with that to some degree. Purple music can use that, like it can use anything, let's say. The realization of purple music can awaken anything and everything.
So with the native, let's say, forms of music that tend to have more connection to nature, are they, let's say, more primordial and less cultural based? And thus, would they have more connection?
That's
to
not a
purple
real
music?
question. That's obvious, that's why they're called natives.
And so then would it have more connection to purple music than?
Not necessarily, depends. It's not about being native, primordial, in a certain obvious manner, you know, like caveman. No, caveman's not any closer to what it is than an executive at corporate level. You know, the president of the United States, it's not any closer to what it is, because it's not a thing. It's not something you do as such, and you get paid to do. It's not business. It's beyond business. The business of the universe, creating and recreating itself, without asking anybody any questions or apologizing for what it is. So it is something transcendent already.
And so does one's state of being when playing influence whether they're going to play purple music or not?
You can't play purple music, so there's no question about that. You can't play. You can play music for your healing. You can call it whatever you want. Say, oh, I just entered the purple zone, man, I feel great. And it's not a feeling, so you're talking to yourself. It's transcendent. See? Right? Like the radiance of silence is transcendent. You have to like open up your super ear to hear it properly. From that level, you don't exist. You're in super hearing. That's spirit. When you're being spirit of super hearing, that's a universe unto itself. Okay? The laws, everything are different.
And
Because you're talking about culturalization and knowledge, which has more to do with materialism and no transcendence. It's to do with concretism, and it misses the point already. You're thinking about it, you're moving away from it at the speed of light.
does having more to transcend in terms of musical knowledge and history make it easier or harder to transcend?
Transcend means beyond. We are already beyond anything and everything we can think about, feel, remember, consider, or imagine.
Then why don't we know this or operate from this?
Because you don't choose to. You're too preoccupied with everything that is important to you, that is part of your distraction relative to your own survival, or presumed survival, or assumed survival needs, which are all programs inherited through the lineage, your family. So your family dictates what it is you do and what you are. Some would say it's genetics. That may have something to do with it, of course. And conditions. People you're around, which is an extension of your family condition, because they are family products as well. Doing the same thing to be commonly communicating with other peeps. So there's common ground, conventionally speaking, which is good. But it's not about transcending anything. It's about becoming more tribal or community or, let's say, togetherness based for comfort and security. And it's a good thing for those who are at that point or in that place. I'm needing to co-survive, co-create, cohabitate, cooperate, and so on and so forth. It's good. We have to go through that and expand into more universal realities. Consider bigger and bigger vision of what it is for ourselves. Whether you're an artist or a shoemaker or a baker or automobile mechanic, doesn't matter. Executive, It's the same. We are spirits in progression. And you need to know what that is, because you're going to be pressed to find out and wonder what that is every time you get a bang, every time you have karma put upon you that you don't believe that you created. But you did, because you were born to experience it. Anything you're born to experience, you did create it, you did agree to it. And that's what makes the universe lawful. See, it's got logic. It's got cause and effect.
You say in the text, no human is given to music except by weakness.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, what do you imagine that means? You're the one questioning it.
I think it means that such a being is limiting themselves by being drawn to music and not what precedes or transcends music. And so let's say they're setting their sights low.
In the Godfire Symphony, I wrote that all music is born of sorrow. Maybe pure music is tragedy, great music. Maybe great humans are also made of tragic experience, catastrophe. And maybe greatness is born that way, mishap. So it's weakness, but maybe that's a strength. Being broken down, yes, weakness. Vulnerable, weakness. Receptivity, weakness, depends. Could be a strength. Brought to your knees, weakness. Get up from there. Being beaten down into weakness, you find your strength. You find your power. Come on.
How is joyous or celebratory music born of sorrow?
Good question. You might, because of sorrow, find more comfort in joyous celebratory music or celebrational music. Yeah, and that's only for the moment anyway. Right? What is joyous that remains joyous? It's a good question for you. So one moment you're joyous, next moment you're back in sorrow because you're on the planet of sorrows. This is a star of suffering, so you have to not believe that, but understand that.
So is that analogous to the pursuit of pleasure being an escape from pain?
Pleasure is pain. Pain is pleasure. Depends on who. But this is all human nature, which is what your conversation is all about. And we were talking about purple music, which is not quite that. It's after the fact. It's like after human. Post-human is purple. Right? Superhuman is purple.
So then, is a state of being independent of music, closer to purple music than music is?
Nothing can get closer to it. It's already been established here. It is what it is. You can't get closer, you can't get farther away from it, you can't get closer to it. Because it's not something you do. It's not something you can do, it's already there. It's like saying, if there was anything about the God, the total, it already is what it is. There's nothing anybody can say to do to change it. It's just constant. It is what it is.
And what is its relevance then to us?
It's a good question. You have to answer it. What is its relevance to you or anybody else?
I think it would depend on one's understanding of what it is first, or experience of it.
Well, you can't know what it is. You forget about that one. It doesn't give you anything to cling to or put in your pocket or put in your mouth. That's not purple music, it's transcendent. It's already gone. You can't be it because you're already it. But you don't know that, so it doesn't exist. Right? It's transcendent. Yeah. That's what makes it so useful. So in fact, because everybody is so busy with their heads and their anuses, living life from a darker place or a less open place, see, a place of concern and suffering and all the usual gravitational stuff that's typically human, and deprived. It's really deprived of space and spirit and all the rest of that. Yeah, because you're in this kind of, let's say, dreadful condition of whatever it is. Then purple music as a proposition even is a balance. Because underneath all of the human suffering is an understanding that there is no suffering. There's more. And every human knows that intuitively. They say no. And some will call it, well, there's heaven. That means there's something more. See? There's tomorrow, let's say. There's always something more. And that's built into us, as well as a genius for suffering. There's a genius for wisdom. See? They are two sides of the same coin of experience as human nature. Suffering, wisdom. Pain and peace. Death and purple music.
So then rather than music, we're actually talking about alignment and identification, it would seem.
Well, you can call it that. I'm calling it music, because that's what I'm saying is real music. See? That's the music that makes the difference, because that's the music we really are at source. And that's what was said at the very beginning of the conversation. Purple music has more to do with the essence, see? The heart of being. And it's playing all the time. That's why I said you need to hear it by hearing. You stop and hear hearing, you might get some of its scope.